Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock and we'd like to get our webinar underway. My name is Heather Phelps and I'm the managing partner of Phelps. A warm welcome to everyone. From our families here at Phelps to yours, we are hopeful that you're keeping well and safe during these extraordinary times. We are delighted to have you participating in our webinar today. In fact, we have over 200 people actually joining us and many distinguished leaders that are present today. I will keep my remarks brief so we can get to our presentation on emergence leadership during and after COVID. If there's anything all of us know for sure right now, it's that we are at the epicenter of massive change, accompanied by a fog of uncertainty. As we've spoken with our clients and partners across the country, four major themes have emerged. They want to know how leadership will change and need to change. Secondly, how will we develop this new form of leadership? Third, what will the workplace look like when we emerge from this crisis? And fourth, how will we prepare our organizations and our people to take on the heavy lifting that will be required for the next 24 months. It's going to take the collective strength of us all to see this through, and that's why it's so important for us to take this moment now to share our experiences and learn from each other. How we define leadership and develop leaders from here on in will be very different than the strategies we employed as little as a few months ago. Just as our strategies are changing, so too will our leadership needs. With all the seismic changes underway, organizations will require leaders with exemplary capabilities in 5 new areas that we will be sharing with you today. We've designed an interactive hour for us to get to know each other, and we invite you to post your questions in the Q&A box. We'll be giving away a leadership workshop at the end of this session to a lucky participant, so stay tuned. This webinar will be recorded and available to participants, and we encourage you to share it with members of your team as you reimagine the leadership capabilities you'll be needing in the coming months. And now let me introduce Dr. Jill Birch, National Director of Leadership and Strategy here at Phelps. Jill is a leadership advisor, keynote speaker, author, and researcher. Her mission is to help organizations develop leadership capacity and build competitive strategies. She has been a CEO and C-suite executive, as well as leadership consultant with Knightsbridge Human Capital Solutions and the Schulich School of Business. Jill has worked with a wide variety of sectors, including finance, energy, telecom, government, not-for-profit, retail, publishing, and broadcasting. Jill has spoken to thousands of leaders around the world. Her presentations embody the leadership concerns we all have in these disruptive times today. Achieving organizational goals by creative innovation, engaging employees, developing innovative strategies, and measuring success. Jill was awarded a PhD in relational leadership from Griffith University in Australia and holds a Master's of Arts from Boise, where she studied how CEOs learn to lead and how they learn to learn. Jill, the virtual floor is yours.
Thanks, Heather. Happy Blur's Day, everyone. I don't know what your life's been like, but I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and they said everything's a blur. So today's Thursday, but it could be Blur's Day, wherever you're sitting. Today is a really important day for us to get together. We're in week 12, as we were reminded this morning. And one of the things that has struck me as we've been thinking about what's been happening with the pandemic and all of the things that have been grabbing our attention in the last couple of months is the speed with which we've been sort of dealing with all of these issues. And, you know, the question I'd ask is, you know, what date did it really hit you? What date did you feel that the COVID-19 pandemic was the real deal, that it wasn't fake news? It wasn't just something that was happening over there. And one of the things that certainly it struck me, it was the week of March 9th. I, was like anybody bustling around downtown Toronto. I'd had a client meeting. I ran into the Eaton Center, was going to grab a coffee, and was stunned by the eerie silence in a place that was otherwise would have been very, very busy. And there was just me, a security guard, and a Purell station. And I looked around and I thought, there's something in the air here. And later that afternoon, I had another meeting. I was talking to a client, and we were talking about the waves of information that were starting to come through and what might happen, what kind of communication strategies you might want to deploy. And toward the end of the call, my client shared with me, I think I'm going to have to lay off a third of my staff here. I've been looking at the numbers. We've been looking at our cash flow. Things aren't good. I let that rest for a minute. And then that week, my father-in-law passed away, John Parker, one of the early commissioners of the Northwest Territories. And we haven't even had his funeral, his memorial service. We don't know when we're going to have that. And so like you, the pandemic hit me first superficially, then pragmatically, and then very personally. And as I began to think about what's happening around the world today and where leaders are at, it struck me that we're in a bit of a maze. And my screen is frozen, which is fun. It struck me we're in a bit of a maze. And this is the maze of this new technology. We're all having such great fun with it. What happens when you're in a maze? You make very quick, often incorrect decisions. You kick yourself later that you should have gone left and you went right. Even if you're with a group of people and you've been in the maze for 15 or 20 minutes, you start to get a bit edgy. You may get a bit panicky. You may start thinking, are we ever going to get out of here? Where is that exit turnstile? And this is the kind of emergence leadership that is happening with all of us now. We are in the land of the unknown unknowns. You've probably heard that phrase before, but I'll underscore it because in the past, leaders were very comfortable because they were making decisions in what I call the discoverable unknown. We could always kind of find our way through. And now in this new maze, when we think about the leadership that's going to have to emerge as a result of this, we start to wonder how we are going to get ourselves out of this turnstile. And it's interesting, as you think about the trends that have been affecting us. I was looking at a Harvard Business Review study the other day and trying to understand how organizations and individuals emerge out of these kinds of situations. And they did a great study. They looked at the recessions of 1980, 1990, and 2000. And what they found was that there was 4 distinguishing factors of organizations that flourished during these times. And there was only 9% of organizations that actually did flourish. And so we should keep that in the back of our minds. It's not a high percentage. And these factors ranged from making the decision between furlough and layoff. They examined what happened at Honeywell, for example, that basically laid off their entire staff during one of the recessions, their key people. And the challenge was, as the recession was ending and people were starting to get back into the swing of things, they had decimated their workforce. The culture was tainted. People didn't want to go back. And so consider, we've gone through the first layer of cuts. Those cuts have been made. And now we're into the next layer of cuts. And they're the painful cuts. They're the really tough ones. So before you make those cuts, consider the furlough versus the layoff. The second thing that they did is what they had the scalpel out, they started peeling around in their budgets, trying to shed excess expenses like we're all doing right now. They made sure that they protected their customers and stakeholders. So those of you who are in the retail industry are looking at the customer point of view. If you're in health, you're looking at your patients, and in education and government, you're looking at your citizens and your students. Whatever your customer experience is, that interface you have, it's protecting that and keeping that relationship alive. The third thing they did was they really made sure that they had the decision-making going to the person closest to the area of impact. And so you see that going on right now all over the world, where governments are trying to make universal policy decisions, but leaving it to those closest to the organization, closest to the ground, to affect those decisions and make the decisions that they feel reflect the moment. And the fourth thing that they did was that these people and organizations were prepared. Now, we've heard a lot about what's gone on, and it's interesting if you look at, what's been happening over the past couple of months where, it came to light that Theresa Tam had tabled a report in 2006 about what needed to be done after SARS, post-SARS. And there was a number of very skilled recommendations that she put forward. And then we found out that we hadn't really acted on a lot of those. And this isn't just Canada, this is all over the world. And people are scratching their heads saying, how is it that we could have had all these plans, but we didn't actually prepare? And so that's one of the themes that we're going to be talking about today when we look at, what is this emergent leader? What is this person going to be thinking about? What kind of attributes are they going to have? And as we get into that, we thought it'd be fun just to do a bit of a pulse check now. And Nelly's going to help us with a poll that's going to go up to just have the audience share with us your sense of how prepared were you as you look back to, getting back after New Year's and, you got back into your office, you started hearing about this little thing called a pandemic. And how well prepared do you think that you were? Well, we'll just take a minute and let people vote in here. All right, well, that's great. Well, thanks everyone for sharing that. You can see that we've got at least 59%. And there's a poll that's just shown up there, Nelly, on my screen that looks like yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, so if we just look at the rankings that we have here, is 59% of you. We've got right now 121 people on the conversation here. 59% of you felt that you were somewhat prepared. So that's a good thing. And of course, now if I was going to ask you if another pandemic hit, what category would you want to be in? And I think all of us would agree, we'd love to know the 9% of you who are well prepared. I want to know who you are. I want to know what you've done. I want to know how you did it. And I want to know how long it took you to get to the place of being prepared or not as prepared as you would like to have been. So one of the things that we would love to do here at Phelps is really create a community of sharing and caring. And what we'd like to do is to be able to, invite people that feel that they were well prepared to share some of the things that you did with our colleagues here. And Neil, you can close that poll down if you'd like now. And as we think about the degree of preparedness, I want to start taking us into the directions that some of us, I think, are facing as leaders right now. And as I've been researching and talking to clients and looking at, some of the leadership that's going on right now, there are 5 areas that I would call watchouts that, as we are thinking about, moments when we're going to start diving into things, that we want to make sure that we begin to start pausing about the assumptions that we may be making and how we might be approaching these things. You don't want to stumble into the abyss. Those of you who have been to the Grand Canyon know that wonderful moment when you can traverse the edge of the canyon, how incredible that is. And it's only really after beginning that first traverse that you begin thinking about, how might I get myself down? And that's where we want to start thinking about our own leadership. And rather than just diving right in and start making all decisions left, right, and center, we want to start creating moments for ourselves where we're allowing ourselves to step back. The first, stumble that you could make as a leader is assuming that trust is already there in your team and in your organization. And I'd invite you to go back to, November, December of last year. How much credit did you have in your trust bank? And it's a bold question to ask yourself as a leader. And, stare yourself back and see what your gut tells you. Is there toxicity on the team? Is there turf wars, political issues? Is there new people coming in trying to shake things up? Are people concerned about their future? And of course, now, ever more, there's going to be this whole issue of, is there trust? Am I going to get laid off? A lot of you are dealing with that question right now. People are worried for their future. And so we're going to talk later on about how you build up that trust on your team if you don't already have a strong level of trust. Another hard thing, we talked about the maze, you turn left, you turn right, mistakes are going to get made. It's just inevitable. We are going to make mistakes. And the notion there as a leader is you want to make sure that you're encouraging your team to come forward to you when mistakes are made. We don't want to have acts where, people are getting together and trying to put things under the carpet or hiding that, hide the numbers, it didn't work out the way we thought. That's the last thing you want as a leader right now. So making sure that you're engendering a real culture of, let's just omit, that we've made a mistake here and we're going to carry on from it. A big one that I'm seeing is this whole challenge with the gap between, the strategy that we did have. You remember that beautiful strategy you worked on, probably last year, and how wonderful you applauded the team. We got the strategy done. And of course, now most of us have put a match to it, or we've ripped out 3 pages that are viable. And we're now reinventing the playbook, right? And so because of that, you are going to have some leadership gaps. You're going to start having to ask people to do things that maybe they haven't been developed to do, and you're going to have to develop them very quickly. So there is this gap that's going to start emerging. And what we want to be able to do is start understanding what those gaps are very quickly and developing our folks in a way that they can start delivering on the things that we need to do now. Don't underestimate the emotional adrenaline running through your organization right now. In the beginning, of course, you could feel it in the organization, in the Zoom calls, you could feel the anxiety. This is an emotionally charged moment on every level you can imagine. And so as a leader, you want to start gauging what kind of emotions are present. Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they neutral? And even be careful of neutral emotions. We want to make sure that we're actually getting to the root cause of how people are feeling. If people are saying, oh, I'm fine, I would be wondering about that. And then, of course, the last one is communicating too much or too little. And most of you have probably seen 10 or 15 webinars on communication as a leader. But my sense is right now is that we're in a new phase where leaders are having to really reconsider how they're collaborating, how they are coming across. And we all kind of need to be expert actors right now as we perform in front of this little green light, which I'm doing for you right now. And, and it's interesting, I sourced this out about a week and a half ago, and this is from a graphic artist who, by the way, was on a Zoom call. And, here's what she was doing while the Zoom call was on. She was creating this fun pictorial about what people are actually doing as they're on a Zoom call. And so as the leader, you want to think about the tiles that are running at the top of your screen, that are running alongside of your screen. You want to make sure that the body language is sending you the right signals. Are you seeing eye rolls? Are you seeing people with their heads down because they're actually looking at their phone, they're not paying attention? Are you getting a smirk here and there that's causing you some concern? And so you want to start measuring what is going on around the table and having some very candid conversations about what's working on your Zooms and what's not, because it looks like we're going to be all, as I call it, Zoomologists over the next couple of months anyways, until things have loosened up a bit. And one of the things that you can do is before your calls is just to create this very simple 3x3 message matrix. Before you get on the Zoom, think about the 3 key messages that you want to, sort of get out there to your team. Think about the proof points around those messages and the kind of stakeholders that are going to be listening to those messages and asking you questions about those proof points. And one of the things that, from a preparedness point of view, I think many of us are jumping on Zoom calls. You hear that, I got to jump on a Zoom. As a leader, you can't jump on a Zoom. You need to be prepared for your Zooms. You need to anticipate the kinds of questions that are going to come up. You need to start kind of stick handling and influence how information is being shared back and forth. And you want to think about the channels. Some people, aren't necessarily, into the Zoom thing, and they may want an email. If you have a team member that's experiencing some personal issues, you want to get on the phone for sure. So these are the kinds of things that you want to think about as you're getting ready to dive into this brave new world that we're in. I want to start talking right now about crisis. And I mean, all of you have participated again, I'm sure, on many crisis planning calls. And what I've tried to do is take the cycle of crisis and humanize it a little bit. I've seen some very structured stage, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 kind of thing. I don't think that's the way the world works, especially right now. It's just not working for many of us that way. And the first stage for me is the brace for impact. And that's sort of where we were around March 17th when everything shut down. We kind of could feel it coming, but we weren't really quite sure how it was going to manifest. I pulled this out of a seat pocket, back, remember the days when you could fly. I think this was like an EVA Airlines flight I was on, and I thought it was quite amusing. The great calm here, where you've got your hands on your head, your elbows are on your knees, you're getting ready to brace for impact. But of course, we know that's not what it's like. It's chaos. It's mayhem. And that's what we experienced the first, couple of weeks in this crisis. People were, trying to get arrangements for their parents, for their children. They were trying to get on calls to understand what work they needed to do. And it was just absolute mayhem out there. So as the leader, the challenge here is that you too are experiencing this crisis. But the opportunity is for you to kind of get on top of it and start looking at the patterns and trends that you see all around you and start making sense of them. And so you've got this dual role where you're wanting to be vulnerable and explain to everybody, yes, I too am concerned. And at the same time, you've got to take that longer term view, get that periscope up, and then start trying to understand what's going on. And as we look at this cycle of the crisis of leadership, after we've kind of gone through that initial impact, we realize that we are going to live. I'm still breathing. Are you still breathing? And we're all breathing with different kinds of masks, from the oxygen mask now to the masks we're all making with our sewing machines at home. And so these are the moments where you start collecting the information around you, reassuring customers, hey, we're on it, our students, our healthcare workers, wherever domain you happen to be working in. Yes, we're on it. We're going to be getting to you right away. We're assembling information. You're wanting to be clear that we don't have all the answers right now, but we're getting as many as we can. And then, of course, you move into the third domain. And this is a specious one as far as I'm concerned. This, I've seen so many webinars about, it's the marathon and the sprint. And it's like, please, this isn't a marathon or a sprint. It's the Olympics. You've got to do shot putting. You're going to dive into a pool, jump on a horse, swing a golf club, play in a soccer game, and then you're going to run the marathon while you're drinking out of a fire hose of information. That's what's going on right now. Now, all while that's happening, you're taking all that information you were collecting in the first phase of the crisis and now starting to make meaning of it. You're starting to create some momentum. Ideas are starting to flow. You're starting to problem solve. And this is where you're working fast and slow at the same time, right? You're walking around the perimeter and trying to discern what is the best way now for us to put out some clear statements about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how it's impacting you. You then move into the fourth stage, where we kind of are right now. And, we kind of, in some respects, think, oh, we got this. We've been at it now for 2 months. The challenge there is overconfidence and thinking that we've got all the information. Of course, we've sent, buckets of information out to our clients. But the issue now is to watch out for complacency, watch out for being a little bit confident that, things are all going to turn around right now. We think you've got a lock on it. Second guess yourself at this stage. You're wanting to reassure everyone as a leader that we're still working on evolving what we're doing. And we're going to do that with you, with your help. And, an example that we saw with that is the CFL situation right now, where, we learned that the CFL unfortunately didn't consult their players when they went to the government, and there was a bit of a disconnect there. And so, involving everybody is a really important thing to do at this stage. And then, of course, we get to nirvana, which is like a year and a half or 2 years from now, when we say to each other, what the hell just happened there? We just got through this crazy pandemic. We're still here. But now how are we going to prepare for the next issue that arises? And whether it's an environmental issue, whether it's a health issue, an economic issue, all of these things are telling leaders that, yes, we need to obviously color inside of the lines, especially those of us, working in regulatory industries. But we also need to color outside of the lines, and getting your team ready to do that, because those organizations that are coloring outside of the lines right now are the ones that are going to gain advantage over those who aren't. And so you're trying to toggle between this tension between, following what has worked in the past, but allowing everyone the freedom to break out and to start thinking about that. So I'm going to be going through a little bit of a guidebook at the end of this session on how that might work for you. I've created a really just a quick acronym for you about the kinds of leadership that we just kind of went over as you think about leading in a crisis. And I've used just the word SEAT, speed, empathy, accuracy, and transparency. And, you know, not pulling any punches. Of course, speed is everything right now, but there's a watch out with it, because the faster we go, mistakes will get made. And the issue is, you know, I used to have an old boss who said, you know, you want to make sure that you've got a lot of balls in the air. There's glass ones and there's rubber ones. You want to make sure that you're catching those glass balls. Let the rubber ones drop, but for heaven's sakes, catch the glass ball. And so you want to make sure that with that information that you're tracking, that you're empathetic. You're obviously wanting to connect in a very real way with your employees. You're wanting to be able to ensure this accuracy we've talked about, make sure that you've got the facts bulletproof as much as you can realistically, what needs to be done. And then of course you've got the need to be transparent, you know, with your customers, with your students, with your healthcare workers, with your patients. We've got a system that's not quite working as well as we wanted, but here are the 5 things that we're doing. And so being very clear about that is super helpful. We're going to go to our next pulse check right now, and I'm just trying to get a sense around our conversation table today. What is your biggest leadership challenge right now? Is it transition planning? And Naily, if you could put up that next poll, that would be great. Is it anticipating leadership gaps? Is it nurturing a shared view in your organization? Are you having trouble with strategy? Are you worrying about recalibrating your strategy in this upside down world? Lack of resources. Are things being stripped off of you as fast as you come up with new ideas? Or people saying, well, I'm sorry, we don't have that money. We can't do that. Or you can't have those people. Is that a problem? Renewing your culture. We're going to talk about culture at the end here. And I see culture as one of the most important aspects that we want to start thinking about in the emergence and the responsibility of leaders there. And the biggie, of course, is the unknown. You know, just every night, you know, you put your head on the pillow and you're thinking, you know, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, I had a sense of, I thought I had a sense of things, and now everything's gone up in a puff of smoke on me. And that's a really tough one that we're also going to be talking about. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to dial in on this one. Okay, that's great. Now it's interesting, as we see the poll here, we've got recalibrating strategy as the #1 issue. And all of us are wrestling with this new world and what this new world looks like. And the challenge that we have right now is that we are in a period of shifting paradigms. And, you know, paradigm is an old word that, you know, it's been used for decades. It's resurfacing now. And we're starting to think about the term ecosystem. And so where we were all as leaders thinking very much about structure and foregrounding function, we're now starting to think about form and ecosystem. And that is feeding into a lot of strategic planning exercises right now. I'm going to be talking to you about some tips that you can use. The unknown is something that all of us are wrestling with, and we will have some tips for you also about the need to continue doing exactly what you're doing, which is what you're doing this morning, is get on every webinar you can that makes sense for your industry. Look at every report. Look at, you know, do look at what's happened in the past. It's not necessarily going to tell you what to do today, but it gives you important markers about things that you can do in the future. And the transition planning, those of our colleagues that are in HR have been thrown a big one, you know, help us get the folks back that want to come back. But when we talk about even the strategy of workplaces and work, you know, some people might not want to come back in a way that they did before. And as a leader, you know, what are you going to be recommending as you start consulting with these broader stakeholders about how you do work forward? I'm just doing some work right now with an organization in Tennessee. And of the 5,000 people that were in the office, already 1,500 people have said, you know what, we can do our job fine here. We're not going to come back. Is that okay with you? If that gets thrown at you as a leader, you want to be thinking about what the strategies are and how you will begin to respond to this new world that we're in. So Naily, if you could close that poll, that's great. And we're going to dive into the 5 competencies that are popping up on my radar screen as I've been looking at the leaders, and I've been trying to understand some of the organizational concerns and challenges that have been going on. And the first area really is for all of us to pause. Just take a moment right now. Take a big, deep breath. Just let that air out. Take a pause. We're not doing enough of that right now. We're all working so hard on every front, the family front, the organizational front, community front, spiritual front. We need to just breathe. And it's fascinating, isn't it? When you push pause on a computer, or if you're listening to a song and you push pause, what happens? Everything stops. What happens when you push pause on a human being? Everything starts. That's when we start reimagining. That's when things are reignited. We start rethinking things. We start remembering things. And so thinking about the need to pause is one of the most important gifts you'll give yourself. And I'm not talking about pausing for 20 minutes or 20 hours here. I'm talking about in the course of your day is finding ways that triggers happen, that you check yourself and that you're able to pause and assess. And there's all different levels and there's all different degrees of pausing. And that's what I'm writing about in my new book called Hit Pause. And those are the kinds of things that I think are going to help leaders as they begin to recraft this wonderful world they are in as a leader, and trying to not only inspire, but to create co-leadership in ways that we just haven't even envisioned right now. The second competency is you want to become a compression expert. And I alluded to that in that slide just earlier about the Olympics. This whole notion about all of us having all of this information, the anecdotes, the intel, customer insights, all of this is on our desk. You know, I think about our kitchen tables or our, you know, if you're working in the office right now, all these lumps of coal that are sitting in front of you. And the job of the leader right now is to crush them very hard and turn them into the diamonds. And right now we need a lot of lumps of coal. I would suggest that right now, if you're playing one key on your piano, if you've got a one solution response to the pandemic from your business perspective, I'd say it's too early for that. And as leaders, what we want to start to encourage, and I'm going to give you a roadmap for that as well, is timing around, let's start getting more ideas around the table that are answering and responding to the questions and challenges we're going to have. And then let's come up with some ways that we can begin narrowing that down. So your role is to both expand, get those ideas out there, and contract and compress. And that to me is a really strong capability that we're going to want to see. We've talked a lot, you've heard it ad nauseum about, you know, flattening the curve. And boy, have we done that well. You know, I was saying last night to my husband, can you imagine, you know, we saw the numbers last night in Canada, we're all starting to get, you know, little sighs of relief. And the issue is that it has worked. Now, conversely, what we need to do in our organization is raise the curve trust. And, you know, the challenge right now is, you know, we had a client at Phelps who was sharing with us that, you know, CIO, that they, you know, worked their guts out, you know, had put 20,000 people at home in, you know, record-breaking time all working from their kitchen table. And then what did we see? The CIO went to their boss and said, hey, boss, you know, I did this great job. And the boss, what does the boss say? Fantastic, you know, Larry or Juanita, whatever their name was. But do we know they're working? How do we know they're working? And that's just got to stop. And what we want to do as leaders right now is understand the distinction between earned trust and granted trust. In the old days, we had to work extraordinarily hard, some of us for years, to earn trust with various organizations, with, you know, departments within our organizations, internally, externally. And at this moment in COVID, we need to grant trust. And you know, there's a study that's just been done that says that the average worker right now is working 2 hours more per day, 2 hours. So yes, they're not commuting. And you know what? They probably could be doing something else with that time, but they're giving it to their organization. And so again, when I talked earlier about the messaging, you know, if you're getting that kind of flack, you know, we need to start installing bots in all of our computers now to start reading what people are doing. And we want to understand if they're ordering socks from Nordstrom's or what the heck they're up to. Pause and have your facts ready and say, well, you know, I've just heard this study and, you know, this is an actual fact that we can see here, that people are working harder, and you probably would have some great anecdotes to share. So raising this curve of trust is all about granting trust. And that's going to affect your culture, and it's going to improve the ability of people to feel that, yeah, I can go on at midnight and complete a task because I had to look after an elderly parent, or I had child issues, I had to do some homeschooling, whatever the case is. And so that flexibility is key. The fourth competency is what I call pragmanity. And what do I mean by pragmanity? This term hit me one day. I was out running, and I was thinking about the incredible ethical decision making that all of us are going to be making right now in the next 2 to 3 years. If we had to make ethical decisions before, some of them will pale in comparison to the kinds of decisions that we're going to have to make. And you see our politicians struggling with it. I mean, every night it seems that Justin Trudeau's beard is getting grayer as he tries to balance reopening the Canadian economy with the health of our senior citizens. And so being pragmatic about expediting and getting things done, but also infusing it with humanity, that there are other issues at stake here. And those of us who are working with younger people who are wanting to get out, they're itchy to get out, and always reminding those younger people that it's not about you maybe getting a sniffle or a cough, but it's about our grandparent maybe getting very, very ill. And that pragmanity that has to happen among and between all of us is a key competency as you step into this new leadership. And the last competency is guarding the future. And there's no more sacred trust than any of us have, whether you're on a board, whether you're on a C-suite, or whether you're supervising a group of people that are in a garden center. It doesn't matter where you are right now, is guarding the organization's future is the most important thing that you're going to want to do. And what does that mean? It means now more than ever, you're going to have to be the custodian of this ecosystem. And within that, you're going to have to become a chameleon. You're going to have to become a teacher and a student at the same time, a coach and a friend. You're going to have to unlearn as much as you have learned. And that's another scary thing, where all of these structures that have been imposed on us for so long are now going to have to be examined, and quite critically, under not only just the media scope that we've seen right now, but the microscope. And so as a leader, you're wanting to collaborate and make sure that those are the kinds of things you're paying attention to. So as we close out here, I just want to go through a quick pause opportunity, a pause session for us to think about the kinds of questions that we want to ask as we pause, we prepare, and we plan. So as we look at, May, there's only about a week and a half left of May, and can you believe that? Where did May go? It vanished in the blink of an eye. The question that you want to start asking in this next week and a half is, what patterns are you seeing and sensing? So remember, we were looking at sort of this view that a leader has to have of being on top of things, as the airplane is getting oxygen, but also participating in it. And so what are the patterns? And take some time now over the next couple of days if you can. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. Maybe get out in the backyard and just maybe start creating some images and patterns of what these things are that you're encountering. As you get into June, you want to start stepping across, and you want to start thinking about what's changed and what should. So there's things that are changing that might not be good in your organization that you need to recalibrate. And you want to list those down very carefully right now, because you might not like some of the things that are happening, and they're evolving very, sort of spontaneously. You want to grab a hold of those. And now you want to start to think about, well, what should change as a result of this? And these are great topics to have around your team tables as you start thinking about what the future is. Now in July, beautiful weather, you want to start stepping sideways. You want to start looking at that strategy. So those of you, 29% of you are calibrating your strategy. The piece of work you have to do in July is to see what's dropping out of that strategy that is going to actually demand a different kind of leadership capabilities or skills. And I'm not talking just about soft skills, but I'm also talking about hard skills. We know that data analytics, for example, is going to explode. It's going to be one of the hottest areas right now. There will be a war for talent on people that can parse data in very effective means. And so you have those people on your team. If you do have people that have potential, can you train them up? And so these are the kind of hard questions that you want to ask yourself. As you get into August, we want to start stepping out. We want to start thinking about, now that we're looking at all of the strategy, we're starting to get the strategy and it's getting a little bit more clearer for us. We still want to maintain our scanning and we still want to be talking as much as we can to people. But we want to start looking at what the possibilities are that we're seeing. And of course, those are going to emerge May, June, July. But you want to take some deliberate moments in your cycle of planning to say, okay, we've had all this time now to look at this. Now, let's really see where the possibilities are. Where are all those diamonds? You know, you brought me boxes of coal, and now where are the diamonds in here? Because we want to really start polishing those diamonds up. In September, well, let's hope there's a little bit more loosening and we're going to start standing out. How will you restructure? And what I mean by that is this ecosystem. You think about the paradigms that are shifting right now and how we do business and how we're organized. All of these things will be markedly different in this new world we're in, with social distancing, with people being very comfortable with interacting online, with virtual innovation happening. How will you as a leader help channel and capture that innovation? And 2021, so that marvelous, how the hell did we do and how did we get here, is getting, what I call on the balcony and looking down on the dance floor, being able to see the kinds of rhythms that are being shaped in your organization and starting to think about, how am I changing as a leader? And that would be a lovely activity for all of us to do over the course of the summer. Think about your leadership before you entered into COVID. Think about your leadership as you are practicing as a leader that's just head down into it. And as you begin to emerge out of it, what kind of a leader do you want to be? What kind of a leadership quality or model do you want to start embodying? Where leadership is not a thing to do, but a way to be. A very different paradigm for all of us. And I wanted just to leave off with a lovely sharing story of positivity, of preparation. And we see here on your screen on the left side is Quinn Callender. He's clearly a Boy Scout. He's from British Columbia. And it's a great story of, just everything we've just been talking about is using the moment to innovate. And he heard that healthcare workers were having a lot of pain behind their ears with the bands for their masks. And so he got on a 3D printer and designed these straps that the healthcare worker can put between the elastics to ease the pain. You've seen these images of healthcare workers with their bruising and all kinds of things. And so he shared that online. It went viral, and there's now tens of thousands of these that have been shared as people use their 3D printers to create this innovation. So that's just a small, tiny sample of what's going on in our great country here in Canada, and the amazing things that are happening every single day in our organizations, great acts of kindness and great opportunities to help each other do the best we can possibly be. So we will beat this. We all know we will beat it. Stay safe, stay well, and stay close to us as we develop this community that we're looking to share with you. So I think at this point, we're going to take some questions, and I think Heather's going to help us there with the questions. Over to you, Heather.
Thanks so much, Jill. Great overview and lots of great reflection for all of us. Thank you again for sharing all of this great insight. So we have a first question that has come forward from a CEO, and the question stands as, if I as a leader have effectively transformed myself during this crisis period, when I look myself in the mirror, what aspects of my leadership style should look markedly different, or at least more toned?
It's a great question. And I think a lot of CEOs, a lot of C-suite individuals, a lot of leaders just generally are saying, what kind of leadership do I now want to embody? And I think the first issue really is leaders now want to be masters of integration, Heather. The whole issue right now of being able to synthesize, take the analysis, being able to pull together the emotional threads, the relational threads that are pulsing through our organizations and pulsing through our teams and making sense of them. Being able to mirror and ask questions, being able to create visualization exercises to say, this is what I think I think what I'm seeing here is this. Is that what you're seeing? And then taking all these points of view and being able to integrate them quickly. Because again, we're in COVID. We've got to talk about speed here. We're not, unfortunately, I wish, we all had months and months and months to, immerse ourselves in these kinds of things. But we want to quickly become the integrator. We also need to become what I call the lab leader. So you are in a laboratory right now, and pretend you're the chief scientist as the chief executive officer. You're encouraging your team to create what I call robust inefficiency. What do I mean by that? All over the world right now, there's, counts are between 75 and 100 labs racing to get to the vaccination. Is that the most efficient way for the world to find, a cure for COVID? It might not be, but the issue is that if we all don't have these locus of development going on, maybe 2 or 3 will make it, the rest of them won't. The issue then is that we need to be able to have those sort of skunk works going on. I think you are going to see a rise in skunk works as the lab leader. You're going to be the leader of the ecosystem, right? So you're going to be understanding, draw me a picture of what our ecosystem looks like. If I was a team leader right now, or if I was a C-suite leader, I would start visualizing, what does it look like now in our organization? What does our ecosystem look like? And then you need to be the alignment leader. You need to start understanding what kind of questions you need to ask. And I would submit that a brand new set of questions need to be asked around the table. A lot of them are how questions. We know what the issues are, but now as we're seeing working with teams, it's about how. So those are some ideas about how I might approach it as a new chief executive officer, if I had these new goggles on, if you will.
Thank you, Jill. Another one that's come forward says that, Jill, you've talked about the different kinds of capabilities that may emerge as our strategies evolve. How do I go about identifying what these might be?
Yeah, and I think this is a very interesting opportunity for all of us. One of the biggest trends that is certainly out there right now that I've been working a lot with people on and seeing it happen is reaching outside. The answer may not be inside your organization right now in terms of your next robust strategy. And what we want to be able to understand is, what are the kinds of inputs that are going on out there, and re-examining all of the experiences that your current stakeholders, customers, students, there's a very broad audience on this webinar today, so trying to be inclusive, not leave anybody out, is understanding what the new life cycle is of this particular customer. Or that student, we know that there's going to be a big announcement, I think today at 1 o'clock or something like that, on the future of post-secondary education. So, we can't assume that we can get into the minds of every student, but we want to be starting to have clear dialogues. And I know many organizations are having customer panels where sometimes they've got 300 people on a Zoom, trying to help them shape what these new strategies look like. And then, of course, you got to start tire kicking. You've got to start piloting like a fiend and testing these things before you kind of roll them out. And so you want to be very careful as a leader about, from a strategic perspective, using these different lenses. So, diversity of voice is very important. You've seen examples of this where, people were trying to create a new type of environment, and they invite in an artist, a designer, a mathematician, and maybe someone who's creating writing books or whatever, to get that diversity of opinion. And then once we have that diversity of opinion, it begins to really ground us in some reality. And there again is your proof point. So it's very carefully, again, balancing your qual and your quant. Because qualitative information is going to be important information as much as your quantitative information. So those are some of the steps. Also, create a gating process for yourself. One of the challenges we're going to have in strategy right now is we're quickly devising, if you've got 3 or 4, diamonds that are on your desk, and you're now trying to tire kick them and see, is this the one I want to put the bet on the farm? You want to be able to create a gating system. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. How do we understand that this thing has got legs and is actually going to give us the payoff at the end? You want to make careful bets and make your investment sound. So that would be some of the things I think about on that one.
Excellent, Jill. So just in the best interest of time, we have 8 minutes left to go here, and we have several questions coming in. So what I'd like to propose is that maybe we close with 2 more questions, and then we'll take it to closing remarks.
Sounds good.
Okay, so another question is, could you give us a couple of examples of the different kinds of pauses leadership should consider as they emerge from the pandemic?
Yeah, and this is hopefully going to be a helpful question response as people are wrestling with the kinds of issues that are going on. And the range of pauses is broad. I'm going to start, we'll go back to that Grand Canyon slide for a moment. And one of the pauses, Heather, is the edge walk pause. And that pause enables you to step back. And right now in North America, one of the challenges we have, and we've just been very heavily cognitively wired. And as I was to learn when I was, doing a lot of the research around the different kinds of leadership and strategizing, this notion of edge walking and employing what I call a spec lens on it. So a social lens, a political lens, an emotional lens, and a cognitive lens. So, Heather and I were having a little joke the other day about, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And the challenge we have in North America right now is we're so cognitively wired that sometimes what's happening is we're forgetting about the social, the political, the emotional, and allowing us to look at a problem and an opportunity through those 4 lenses. Do that step back, do that pause, and it allows you to then be able to see a different way of looking at the problem. And that's not, you can do that yourself, but you also want to start including your team in that and having them start thinking about these different kinds of lenses, bringing those lenses. There's been studies done right now that, 50% of what's driving organizations is, as people are loyal to organizations, is emotion. So I'd ask all of us, how often are we factoring emotion into these decisions? And loyalty and the culture that we need to develop is going to be key around that. Another kind of pause that you can use is a reflexive pause. And that's at a time, and I'll speak right now to the leaders on our call that are having moments of doubt. You're by yourself, you've just had your 15th Zoom call for the day, you're pooped, you need to re-energize yourself. Take the reflexive pause. And by doing that, it's a simple acronym, you awaken to what's going on around you. You take that breath, start considering what's happening around you. Think about what happened that day maybe, or that week that's made you feel unsettled. That feeling you sometimes have in your stomach of being unsettled. And when you have that feeling, it's a good feeling. Don't ignore that feeling. It's your body telling you that something is amiss. Then you start taking responsibility and ownership for what you're feeling. And that's a really important component here, is that all leaders take action. We know that that's why leaders get hired, because they always take great action. And then once you've taken responsibility and named what that issue is, you then want to get into action. So AURA is one of the ways that as a leader, you can kind of go into yourself and come back out and renew your energy, because we know the stamina that's going to be required right now is going to be incredible. So you can have a reflexive moment to talk about your business issues. You can have a reflexive moment to talk about your stress levels. Be sure you reach out to trusted friends and family. All of us need to do that more than ever. I've heard many, many heartwarming stories about people who have called people that they haven't talked to in years. I used to work at Retail Council of Canada many, many years ago. And 2 weeks ago, I hosted a Zoom with people I hadn't seen in 20 years. And all of them hadn't seen each other. And it was this amazing moment of, what do you know? What are you hearing? And the richness on that Zoom gave us all strength and hope. And so these are the kinds of things that leaders can do as they begin to take a pause.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, one last question here is, there will be many employees who want to go back to normal, meaning the way it was. What are some thoughts to engage them, to get them pumped up about the future? This is coming from a CHRO.
Yeah, it's a great question, Heather. And I don't know if anybody's been following the reopening stories. One of the things I would encourage our human resource colleagues is to look at some of the stories that are going on right now. I've been following the GM story. I don't know if anybody's been following what Mary Barra just did last week. And she sent every GM employee a welcome back package. Inside the package was 5 masks, a personal letter from Mary, and a playbook about how they were going to re-enter the workforce. And I would also encourage, it's funny, I had a great human resource colleague many years ago who we had an employee who was coming back after having a lot of time off of work. And the term isn't a polite term, but the term that he used was a work hardening, is that you can't simply ask people to come back after 3 months off and it's just going to be like it was March 16th before lockdown. And so this gradual introduction of structure, we probably are going to have to reassign workflows and people coming in for the morning and then going home, and then people coming in the afternoon because of social distancing. And so I think part of it is be that leadership lab person and have fun with it. Make sure that you're injecting fun and humor. I can't say that enough right now, that people need to put that smile on their face, because there has been a lot of moments that have been trying. And so look at, examples of having CEOs give videos. So we've seen a lot of that. I don't know if those of you have been following Arne Sanderson from the Marriott Corporation, who's been posting videos of hope. And boy, what a story he has. He's just gone through chemo. And here he is with his hair all shaved and giving stories of hope to all of their thousands of employees. And so engaging C-suite is going to be vital, engaging those closest to the ground. And then I would say to the CHRO, you want to start thinking about any objections that people are going to raise. And again, you want that proof point. What are those 3 key messages you want to be able to have right at, up your sleeve, as people are saying, I'm not sure if I'm going to be safe coming back. I don't know if I want to come back, is having those proof points. One of the biggest proof points, Heather, is going to be culture. Is that when you reignite your going back to work program, you will reignite culture. And so it's so vitally important right now that you've got culture uppermost in your mind about painting the picture as the CHRO to your stakeholder groups. What does this culture look like? How does it feel? Articulate it emotionally, politically. Try and get that spec lens around what you're doing. And talk to your CHRO community. I know there's a lot of great work going on with HRPA. There's a lot of think tanks going on right now. Use the time, and I shouldn't say this, but I don't think I'll give anything away. We are going to be hosting a CHRO panel on this very issue in a month from now. So we encourage everyone. This is all about just conversations here. We're just trying to share best practices. So those are just some tips, but we hope those of you who are concerned about transition and getting people back will join us.
Thank you very much, Jill. So with the additional questions that are left, I think we'll look at getting some answers out to people. So stay tuned. We will get some information back out. But now I'd like to really turn this over to Jason Phelps, who's just joined us. He's partner of the firm. He'll provide us with closing remarks.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks to everybody who joined us this morning to talk about Emergence leadership. Jill, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your insight. As I was listening to some of the concerns and some of the questions and some of your strategies, Jill, 3 things really stood out to me. The first of stopping to take a pause. I think it's something we don't do often enough, and that pause before we leap into action, I think, is critical. As I work with our clients, many are saying to me they need to rethink everything from resourcing to strategy. Yesterday alone, I was talking to a client who typically has 1,900 employees in one location. With social distancing measures, they're planning and strategizing on bringing staff back. They're only going to be able to fit 200 to 300 now in that same location. A lot of change there. So they're looking for ways to find more room to maneuver. Hitting pause is a great way to create some distance, to analyze what's coming forward, and to try and make sense of it. The second idea is to better mobilize ourselves and our teams to both plan and prepare for the months ahead. We've all had great plans, some of the best laid plans. But as Jill said, we're all taking lighters out and either putting them up in smoke or ripping them up over the past month and a half. So take advantage of this opportunity. We're finding a lot of clients are really taking advantage now of trying to reduce some of the red tape to move initiatives forward. Initiatives that would take 2 or 3 months to get the right approvals and to have the right enough stakeholder conversations to move something forward, all of a sudden are able to move within weeks. So take advantage of that opportunity. Finally, the need to understand the kind of leadership capabilities that will be required as our new strategies emerge will be a key factor for all of us. Defining whether your leaders are critical thinkers, foresighters, good relationship builders, innovators, healers, these will all be table stakes in the next year ahead. Now I have the distinct pleasure of announcing the winner of our draw prize today. It's a 1-hour Emergence leadership webinar, which Jill has graciously agreed to tailor and customize depending on your sector. Our winner today is Andrea Clements, Global Affairs Canada Director for the Aerospace, Automotive, Defense, and ICT practices. Congratulations, Andrea. We'll be in touch soon to organize this. Many have been asking about the presentation availability. Yes, we will be sending out a link to this presentation for you, and ask that if you found it useful, please pass it along to colleagues. I'd like to just wrap up as we're at our 11 o'clock time. Thank everyone for joining us today. As Jill had mentioned, in a month's time on June 23rd, we will be having a roundtable with CHROs about the future of work and workplaces during and after COVID-19. We've also been having some very interesting virtual conversations with clients across our sectors, virtual coffee chats. You will see some of these start to emerge on our site and on some of our social media over the next week. We've got topics from CTOs talking about how they virtualize their workforces through to long-standing remote leaders who will be giving us ideas on how to balance family and work and what are some of the key takeaways working remotely. So thank you again to everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and we look forward to virtually seeing you at the next webinar. Take care.